Hello. Today the live will be in English. If you are getting in, um, I'm waiting for Chiara. Give me 1 minute. She's here. Let me try and pin the comment. 1 second. One minute. Chiara. Connecting. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
So I hope there will be some foreigners and not just Brazilians practicing their English. But it's amazing that we did this in Portuguese yesterday and English today, very old school translation.
Thank you so much for the invitation again.
I am so happy you accepted my invitation. And I was trying to pin the comments to leave our...
That's you.
1 second. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, pin comment. Just so people who arrive late know what we're talking about. Can everybody hear me? Please send hearts, joinhas, anything that proves that you're there on the other side and we're not doing a crazy dialogue monologue. Okay, so we'll start from the beginning. And Chiara Banfi is from São Paulo, my hometown too, in Brazil. And she's been in Rio for 10 years. I have a friend here in New York who says that if you say you're from Brazil, they're like, oh, great. And then they're like, where in Brazil? And you say São Paulo, and the conversation is over. But if you say I'm from Rio, they're like, oh my God, amazing.
Rio, amazing.
So now you know the feeling. Look, Alice Quaresma is there. So another Carioca da Gema. Chiara Banfi studied at FAP, which is basically the place where every amazing artist in Brazil, in São Paulo especially, goes to. So it's a very prestigious university. And then, just for you to have an idea, she graduated in 2003. And by 2005, her work was at Fondation Cartier in Paris. So that was a pretty...
yeah, it was an exhibition where artists that had already shown there invited young artists to participate. Yeah. So I was dedicated by Claudia Andujar, which was very special.
Yes, and then just to give you a brief idea of what she's been doing in the last couple of 10, 20 years, right? 20 years. She's exhibited her work at the National Art Museum of Beijing in China, Oi Futuro Museum in Rio, Instituto Tomiotaki in São Paulo, the Museum of Modern Art, the Art Foundation for Contemporary Art in Montreal, the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego, California, the Astrup Fearnley Museum in Oslo, Norway, and as we said, Fondation Cartier. And her work is in collections of the Museum of Modern Art in Rio, Harvard University, right here. So if you're in New York watching us when quarantine allows, go visit her work in person. And again, I describe it as I feel it. And since we did it yesterday, I feel a little more confident about saying that I see your work as this very poetic dance that relates the visual arts with the music world.
Yeah.
But also always paying this very beautiful... it's a very beautiful way of paying attention to nature and to transitions and silences. And we're going to talk about your maybe 4 most recent exhibitions, or 5. But just for people to have an idea, Chiara and I have known each other for a while. Look, Rodrigo Pena. But we mostly exchange notes on moss and trees and plants. And more recently, birds.
Yes.
So we definitely feel like old ladies, but also lovers of nature.
Of nature.
So, Chiara, maybe we start from the beginning. I don't know where we start, but I'll choose pauses by Bach. How do you call it in English? Pausas de Bach.
I think it's no pauses by Bach. Yeah.
So just for you to have an idea of, I will show you. You have a book there that you could show, Chiara.
Yeah.
But basically, she gets the music sheets from Bach, Sebastian Bach, and covers the entire page with black ink, but leaves only the symbols that represent pause, which basically is a visual representation of silence.
Silence, yeah.
So how is that?
Well, in one of my, I guess, research and interest is silence, and we spoke about it yesterday. I find it fascinating that it's almost more of an idea, because there is no absolute silence. There is always some kind of sound, even if you are in not sure how it's called in English, but a soundproof room where they extract all sounds. You can hear your body working. So the blood vessels, the heart, the pump. So looking at the music sheets, I just thought about erasing the music and sort of revealing or putting in evidence the pauses, or it's a way of bringing them to light, in a way, like to make them more in focus.
Which is interesting. I mean, of course, it brings to mind John Cage, who did the 3 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. And of course, silence, as you just said, is very unattainable, because of course there's your heart, as you said, your breathing, your breath. And even when people were sitting down waiting for the performance to happen, there's the like nyek, nyek, that the chair will make, or the cough. So it is pretty poetic to think about how to visually represent silence, and it gets us very close to an idea of meditation, which is also part of your practice, and even this search for how to make it, because there is a symbol for pause, but you're also because when you talk about Joseph Albers in your most recent exhibition, there's also this idea that in order to understand and perceive music, you need to understand silence, right? Or not understand, but like pay attention to silence. Silence is a very important part of music.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other. They go hand in hand. And I don't know, for the pauses of silence or pauses of I don't know. It just also felt a bit like a constellation, when you gaze at a black paper and all the, as if it's like starlights. And so there's a thing, what I really appreciate in stopping or pausing is trying to interrupt the internal dialogue somehow. And I think art has that capability. And and if a piece of art brings some sort of pause or some sort of quietness, then you have an opportunity to shift a point of view or feeling or anything, really. And that's
because in a way, I love the artist Vaya Selmans. She paints the ocean and she paints the stars, and she talks about how when she's painting or drawing the ocean, she is trying to talk about what cannot be said. Right? So there is this connection between maybe the visual arts and the silence, in the sense that it is something that we all know what we're talking about when we talk about it, right? Like I say silence, you're like, sure, right? Or feeling, and you're like, sure, but it's very hard to describe it. And then when we go to your more, so Pausas de Bach is from 2016?
16, yeah.
Because last year I was lucky enough to see it in person. You had the exhibition Run Out, which, sorry, sometimes the angle of the iPad, 2 screens in dialogue is complicated, but can you see it?
Yeah, you can see it.
Anyway, so this show was called Run Out, which is the sound of the end of an album after the record is done playing, right? And you recorded that sound in these albums that maybe you can see here.
Transparent vinyls. Yeah, Run Out is that when the needle when the side of the LP is done, for the needle not to run onto the label, they put this groove in an infinite spiral, so that, hey James, so that you keep, turning round and round, and doesn't spoil the record or the needle. And it's, for me, it's a bit of a sound of an end, or a sort of silence, because you just finished listening to it, and sometimes you forget to turn it off, and then there's just this random noise happening, that is a sort of silence in my...
It's almost like white noise in a way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's something that is kind of always there, right? Like in a weird way, it's not something that... It's very easy to actually forget that an album is over. Like if you're distracted, it's very meditative in a weird way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that this research took you to... So here the albums or the records are presented in a shelf, right? I'm having a hard time showing. Yeah, here.
There you go.
In shelves. And yesterday we talked about how the way they are shown mimics in a way the sheets, the music sheets, right?
Yeah,
so
there is, and we spoke about the square and the circle. And the repetition invites a rhythm, and if you have a rhythm, there's a beat, and then there's the sound. So I think that these overlaps of geometric shapes inevitably can react some kind of rhythm. So for sure, but it was something that happened during the process of making the work, kind
of naturally, just part of the process. It's so interesting because if you think about silence in music, or even the run out, the sound of the run out, there's something so again about this unattainable moment, but also there's something about transition, right? So like between side A and side B, you'll probably listen to that sound, and between the breathing in and breathing out, there's that, like, what happens in that millisecond where you're not either breathing in or out, or if you're, I don't know, I'm thinking of yoga for some weird reason, but like if you're in one pose and going to the next, what is the name of the pose between the two? So it's so interesting to try and find that space that is usually not what we pay attention to. And I think that's what you do beautifully, is to kind of bring a visual awareness to that in between
of space. Of how is it, vacuum of emptiness,
vacuum.
I guess. Vacuum. Yes. Yeah. Somebody asked here about the works with Japanese paper and the music sheets. I didn't see the questions properly, but they asked me to talk a little bit more about that.
Can you tell us more about papel japonês sobre papel pautado?
Yeah.
It's one specific artwork?
No, it's one of the phases that I can talk about it when I talk about one of the record albums that I did the cover for, because it's sort of in that period.
Yeah. So the interesting thing for people who probably don't know in New York is that Chiara is also married to one of the most prestigious producers and musicians in Rio. If you haven't heard his music, I'm gonna write his name here, and you go to Spotify as soon as we're done.
He'll appreciate it
and listen to it. But there's this idea too that when you moved from São Paulo to Rio, you went not only out of your very chaotic hometown that makes Manhattan feel small, right? São Paulo has 20 million people. And then you moved to Rio, which is much more chill. I mean, it's still a big city, but much more chill. Like people go, to the supermarket wearing their bathing suits and maybe a t-shirt on top. It's very informal. Yeah. So you talked about the transition and spending a lot of time in his studio.
Yeah. when I moved to Rio, I didn't know a lot of people, and I didn't have an art studio, and it's a, you know, a transition phase. So I would spend hours in his music studio, and then my work before that was always related to music, but it was in a more abstract or I wouldn't say poetic, but I used to study. I did a lot of vocal classes, and it wasn't the idea of becoming a singer or anything, but it was an exploration of sound, of what the voice could do, and where we could take it, and where in the body it could vibrate. And then moving to Rio and having this contact with the making of music, and being in contact with recording and all the phases and mixing, brought a lot of more input, and that inevitably went into my work. Probably the first series that would have that in more evidence is the Sunburst series, where I researched the painting of guitars, that a technique, a technique used to decorate or paint guitars and basses, and I started, you know, researching what wood they used, the technique of the paints, and then I also really like the idea that then the way they talk about an instrument is the body and the arm and the hand, and for guitars they have the shield. I don't know if it's shield in English, but in Portuguese it's now I forgot the word in shield.
Escudo.
É o escudo, exatamente. So that relation, we love you too, James. That relationship with the body, you know, and how it sort of becomes an extension of the body, the instrument. And so I did these paintings almost the size of a human body. See, eu também te amo.
This is getting very emotional. It's like, I love you.
I love you. And so that the person could see him or herself reflected in the painting, because it's very there's a lacquer camada, como é que é? A
layer,
yeah, that you can see yourself reflected on it.
And it's so beautiful because you do see yourself reflected in music, right? Like I love the idea that Marcel Proust says that the book is like an optical instrument that will help you see things in yourself that you wouldn't without it. And in that sense, I think if you see yourself reflected in that painting, it's like the same thing that happens to
and I think nature does that too.
Cassim is in the house.
Oh, Cassim.
So just so we don't run out without talking about
Albers.
Joseph Albers, especially if there are Americans watching us. So when you started this research, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got? I'm going to show Albers because yesterday someone was like, oh, you talked about Albers, and I didn't know who he was. But if you don't know who Albers is, go Google him.
Yeah, Albers, what happened was this project run out. I wanted to subtract. It was a subtraction exercise, you could say. So I subtracted the album cover, the sleeve, the music, the artist, the label, and I wanted to work with the transparent materials to sort of have the structure of this object of music, you know. And when I started layering the squares of the covers and the sleeves that I had transparent material, I went back to Albers that I had looked at obviously in school. And when you think of color, he's one of the big references, and so I went back to him and really got deep into his work.
Because there is also something about the transition, right? So between one color and the next.
Yeah, and how the like you said yesterday, how one color influences another, and it's and it changes the other. And I think yeah, there's an overlap, and that's what we do as people too. You know, when we start living with somebody or you know, being around somebody for a long time,
For
we
sure.
sort of, yeah, one
And there's
color.
also this beautiful relationship between his work, and if you think of about music in the context of your exhibition, is that he used to talk about the infinite possibilities of color combination. So he used to say, I could spend millions of years making different combinations of colors just in the same format and never be done. And the same is true with music, right? Like you have only those notes, but how many songs can you compose, right? So
for sure.
So yeah, Joseph Albers is a master. And do you have the part of the artwork with you? So that
yes, I do. I have it here. So this is one, and then I found this one empty vinyl that is pink. So I don't know the transparency. I don't know if we can see it here through the.
Yeah, a little bit because I can see your face behind it.
Oh, good.
But yeah, Sylvia is saying here, Joseph Albers is the color guy for sure. He wrote the most important book on color theory in the 20th century, Interaction of Color.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's true. Your fan is saying here that Joseph Albers is great, but not as good as you. Adriana Queiroz, I love Chiara. I have her work. I love that collectors are in the house. And then I wanted to talk about two things. First, the fact that because I was talking to Chiara in preparation for this conversation, and she said, oh, have you ever heard the sound of the planets? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh yeah, no, the planets, you go to NASA website and you can hear Venus and Mars. So talk about that a little bit, like your interest in rocks and the sounds that they emit. Also, tell us about your balcony.
I was researching the making of the turntable and equipment, music equipment in general, and I, you know, reading it, they use quartz. Quartz is in the making for it's an equalizer. So much so that the first watch that would not stop time is the quartz watch, and it was because of a crystal, and it blew my. I know it was. I'm probably naive, and this is a known factor, but I love the fact that even though we keep not trying to move away, but inevitably moving away from nature, it is within everything that we use. And so I started looking at the frequencies of rocks and crystals, and just visualizing, and obviously everything has a frequency, so everything vibrates and is energy and has a frequency, so everything has a sound. And then I started plugging with RCA cables.
Oh, let's show them
show them rocks that would not meet in nature. So that one in the case is
obsidian, right?
An obsidian from Mexico, and a quartz, a pink quartz from Bahia, and I started, you know, it's an idea of a conversation or a dialogue or a song or a sound that the two of them together would mash up, would make. And in this research, I came upon the sound of the planets, and and you know, it was really fascinating because they each have a very particular sound. And Venus is a beautiful sound. Mars is eerie. Earth sound is a bit eerie, I thought.
It is amazing. So Ju Gataz is saying that they wouldn't meet in nature, and it is true. It's almost like in that sense, a relationship between two foreigners, or like a globalization of sorts, right? Where you put together the improbable in nature.
Yeah.
And then you also was, because I was asking Chiara, I'm very jealous of people who are in nature right now during the quarantine. Of course, I'm in New York. And then I said, so you're enjoying the forest in Rio? And she said, no, but I do have a binocular in my balcony.
Yeah, everything here is closed. I mean, they you know, they're asking not to go to the waterfalls or the beaches. The beaches are closed. And so for sure, I have a small area outside, which I'm extremely lucky about. And we spend a lot of time there with a binocular, and I have some trees in the far that I could look through and gaze into the leaves and the shadows, and the twirling, and that's really.
And your son's name is Cosmo, so that's
yeah,
its own universe. It's around you all day long, calling your name.
For sure.
And do you want to show? I just because you talked about leaves. Do you want to show the cover you did for Forró in the Dark?
Yeah, yeah. So this is the cover. If you can see.
Oh my God, I love this so much.
It's a banana leaf.
This is amazing. And plus, I would pay so much money tonight to dance some speakeasy forró.
Yeah, and then there's this other one that would relate to this is an instrumental band that Cassim is part of. And
Cometa. Can we find it on Spotify?
Yeah, both of these are.
So guys, come on, Cometa, go to Spotify.
Yeah, and this was one of the first drawings I did with music sheet, where I cut the paper using the structure of the music as the structure of the drawing. So,
and it looks 2D, but is it cut out in real life? Or
no, it's
just a collage and then a photo of the collage.
It's a picture of the collage, which is cut in real life. This is real, but it's a picture of it, no? It's overlapped.
Yeah.
So there's one cut over the other one that's not cut.
Okay. Yeah. Olha, Flávia Pedras. Every name I see, my heart is with you, person.
Yeah.
Speaking of album covers, you have the series Aquele Disco, that record, where you kind of deconstruct the cover of the album. So the front, the back, and then the folds.
Yeah.
Here you also see.
So the idea of this project was a bit after I made the Forró in the Dark cover. I thought of this series where there was no artist or no record, and it was about the cover. It wasn't about representing anybody. It was just about cover possibilities with nature, with leaves. Alô.
Demorou, mas chegou.
And I wanted to show what it looks like when it's cut, before it goes into the making, before it's folded and made into a cover. So there's all the information, all the informations about where to cut and the possibilities of a 3-sleeve, a 3-fold, 2-fold, and 1-fold.
Which again, in a weird way, I just thought about the fact that when you're showing this kind of backstage or the behind the camera of even the visual part of music, you're also trying to bring awareness to something that usually people don't see, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So like I had never thought about how many folds was there in an album cover. So we could almost say that your work is that of a detective.
But also how, for me, I think it's such a good space for an artwork. I think it's and once you unfold, it becomes a really interesting area of expression of work. So that's why I also thought about opening it up, and
even the leaves are opening up. So there's also this very fractal, right? It's very very much like nature. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, and I love that idea that music is so poetic and hard to describe, and it brings you a feeling right away. You were describing music as something that comes even before. It's not something that you're introduced to. It's not like, oh, I remember, as you said yesterday, like I don't remember the first time I heard music, but it is also math, right? So there's there's the structure, there's, and the same with nature. There's so much geometry involved in, if you look at a shell, or if you look at the
incredible
the sunflower, and that appears in your work too, right? I'm thinking a little bit about
the
drawings of Debussy.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it a little bit?
This series, it was also parallel to the one where I painted where I painted over the music, Bach music, and this one I started painting over just the ball of the note, and trying to reveal the structure that the lines would give. And I found it amazing that you could, it was almost like a cut of a architect's drawing of some kind of modern architecture. So, yeah. So layers, fascinating.
And also this idea of, like, again, architecture is so much, like, if you think about the space you're in, there's so much emotion associated with it. You feel at home and you feel protected, but it's all an architect and an engineer, and all depends on numbers. It all depends on numbers to be standing, right? So there's this kind of, like, again, it's like the backstage of a home.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like all these numbers and these codes that are usually not something you're thinking about. And then should we go to André Midani? Should we go to No, Yes, Please?
For sure. Absolutely.
So before Cassim, the most important producer.
No.
Music producer in Brazil. No, for sure. Yeah. André Midani was one of the most important music producers in Brazil, responsible for bringing out so many talents. And he wrote the text
for one of my
the exhibition, No, Yes, Please, where I'm showing the visual. Maybe you talk about it instead of me. I'm talking too much.
This series, what I did was during 2-3 years, I collected the sleeves of the vinyls. Only sleeves that were blanked out. There was white sleeves that were maybe stained by time, or sleeves that related to the industry, not the artist, but the industry. So the record label. And after I collected about 300 sheets, I saw that I had a map of an industry that no longer existed, and collections. And I thought of those walls in the museums of or I kept imagining the office of the big companies filled with the golden albums on the walls, and I just wanted to be overcome by all these the vinyls. And I made some empty albums, some empty LPs, and because it wasn't again about the music, it was about a story or a time in history where the music industry was huge and very powerful. And Midani was part of that history. He's responsible for signing the most amazing musician and artists in Brazil's story. And his story is absolutely fascinating. If you guys have a chance, read his autobiography and see his documentary. It's insane. The guy was incredible. And I had met him and at dinner, and I asked him to write and he wrote me. It was more like a letter, and
it feels very personal.
Yeah. And he was very, impacted by the album, the records without music. He had never imagined that, without the grooves, and how the grooves represented his story. And so it was really, really special. And that one that you saw, that your show that said No, Yes, Please, was a very special find, because I was at a friend's house that was very close to Leonilson.
Leonilson is a Brazilian artist, very influential Brazilian artist that died of complications from HIV.
Yeah.
And he was basically our Louis Bourgeois, right? Like, talked a lot about his emotions and had this very beautiful production. But yeah, sorry.
No, so my gallerist, there's nothing on the white. Somebody's asking the white vinyl what's on. There's not. It's empty.
The question comes from a DJ, so take it seriously.
So if there is a little bit of a stain, but it's because the machine, they can't really clean the machines to make the white vinyls, and so sometimes the black powder or whatever color was used before,
right,
stains, which is really beautiful because it ends up looking like some drawings.
Mm-hmm.
But that sleeve was Leo Nilsson wrote that. No, no, yes, please.
Plus, and I mean, it's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. No, no, yes, please.
It's brilliant.
It's almost as like, it reminds me of like thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
It's like no, no, yes, please. It's so interesting. He changes his mind halfway through the sentence. And then speaking of music and art and everything, I love your most recent series, Abalo. I posted the video, so if you don't know the work, it's on my stories, also on Chiara's stories. But I'm going to give you an idea. Maybe you describe it, Chiara, where this is just a photo from a video.
So I had this lucky coincidence, or happened that I was, after a rainstorm, I was at this construction site under a deck, a wooden deck, and there was a box with sand. That's the men that were working used to make concrete, and it was filled with water. So the sand had spread, and there were leaves and twigs. So it reminded of, I didn't say this yesterday, but it reminded me of a river, you know, a sandy river, and which we have so much in our coast in Brazil, the rivers when they reach the beaches, and there were drops falling from between the deck, and the water reflected, gave a music structure. So you could hear the music without hearing it, you know, you could see the music, I would say. And so I grabbed the camera from a cousin of mine, and I filmed that, and I got two films. I recorded for about 3 minutes, which is a time of a pop song or a song. And yeah, that's a beautiful shot. That one, who made the soundtrack for that was Cassim. And then I and then I invited Diogo Strauss and Pedro Bernardes, who are 2 music producers, to do the soundtrack. And after a few years, I understood that I needed more to invite more musicians, and to have like a collection of the situation and different visual compositions that would invite musicians to do several different kinds of soundtracks. And so I ended up filming about 30 videos and invited a lot of really good musicians and friends, musicians too, to do the soundtracks. And it's a collection which I'm still working on. And the piece I called Abalo, which in English would be shaken, maybe.
It's whatever happens to the water. So they're affected, and
it's
a response.
The word means, when you're moved or when you're shaken. Sometimes you can say that.
I'm gonna look for the dictionary.
Okay. And so it's an art piece that I'm still working on. It's video, which is the first time I really work on it. I did one video before this, but it was a very specific project. This is like a project that for a while I will be working with the medium. And I ended up doing one of the soundtracks, which was really rewarding and something that I already did too, and I'm really looking forward to working more on that part too.
So it's translated as shaken or shake, so abalo in English.
Yeah. Okay, shaken. Yeah.
And I love what you said yesterday, that when you invited the musicians to create the soundtrack for the visuals, it was a carte blanche. You were basically inviting them to do whatever they wanted.
It was a conversation. Yeah. I wanted it to be a conversation where I say something and they just return, you know, and not.
James is suggesting abalated. Very good.
Of course, very.
Very, very good. I was also thinking about how you know, when you open up for this dialogue between the visuals and the musicians, it is also what you do in a way, right? Like you make them flirt music and art, or visual arts.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, we already told everyone yesterday, but Chiara sang. I met her and I thought she was going to be a singer because she has an amazing voice. Cassim, let's work on that next album. But there's also this love for music that it is very much a part of your maybe your life even before you knew you were going to be an artist.
For sure, yeah, there was.
And can we watch Abalo during quarantine? Why don't you do a screening, Chiara? My husband made a screening of his movie online, and it had more than 1 million.
I saw that. That was amazing. That is a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to talk to
gallery.
I'm going to talk to my gallery. That is, Luciana. That's a really good idea, Lu.
Luciana PR hired. Would you talk about the tape?
Yeah.
And visually describe it, because I don't have a photo.
I will, Lou. I'll do it, and I'll describe. So the other video I made, it was I was using for another series. I was using the fita de rolo, which is the recording tape, 1 inch recording tape, where they used to, and some people still do, record music on before the whole digital and Pro Tools and everything, and once one day I was working in my studio, and I put it on a stool. I didn't tell you this yesterday, and I put the tape on a stool just to to leave it there. So I was to do something else, and the tape started falling, and on its own making this beautiful rhythmic sound of just swoosh, 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 swoosh. And I just stood there and watching it until it stopped, which took about 3-4 minutes. And I thought the sound was really beautiful, and the movements and sort of a hypnotic and spiraling dance. And so I set it up in this. I set up a like a pedestal, and I made it so that the tape would be positioned in a way as if it was an instrument. And I set up microphones, and I filmed the tape playing. So it was
playing itself.
The work is called toca fita. So play tape or playing tape. Yeah.
And as you said, it's also the timing of a song, usually the same
length
of a song.
Luckily it happened so that I didn't interfere with it, so it would go for a time. It had speed and fluidity, and then at a certain point it would scratch on the board of the hard part of the tape, and so it would go stop, and then you think, oh my God, it stopped, and I go.
Which takes us back to Run Out, right? Is the sound of music when music is not being played. Median just got in. So nice to see people coming in. We notice all of you. Which
Carol Bosch. Oh, linda.
I love that idea of also, as you said yesterday, right? That the tape is usually recording sound, and now you were recording the tape. So there's also something very meta, right? When you're
turning or finding sound in other places, I guess.
And then would you talk a little bit about just being quarantined? How's your mind navigating it?
There good days and more challenging days. I feel that I think we adapt, and if we keep it's very difficult, but it's also a few things that I'm really finding important and really good is being with my son and my husband constantly, every day, the whole day, the three of us, which is something that never happens or never happened. And so it took a while, sort of each of us finding a rhythm, and I think we're in a good place, the three of us, and there's a rhythm, and so that I think is really enriching for our relationship as a family, as a nucleus. My husband has 2 daughters also in Japan, and we talk to them, mainly the eldest one, every day. And so, which is also something. Usually she's in school when we're waking up, and so, or she's going to sleep early and all that. So there's that kind of day that is really enriching. I try to see at the least bit of news possible, because it's very disturbing, everything we're seeing, not only with the pandemic, but in our country, what's happening at the moment with politics, which is
its own pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Its own pandemic, exactly. And finding ways to pause and to try and come back to one thing that we were talking about nature, and I talked to a friend about this, and I thought, in my mind, I needed nature to be in peace and to be okay. And I always thought that because I grew up very close to nature, I always thought that it was something I needed that, and what I'm seeing is that it's an opportunity to find nature inside,
within,
and so sometimes within, and so sometimes I just try and meditate and remember a place that I really feel good about or really love being in, or like you said, the binoculars, I just go out and I keep gazing into the leaves and the wind, and that really helps.
And you said something so interesting too, that because when we looked at Abalo, can you show the Abalo partituras, the sheets?
For sure, yeah.
We have it. So here Sandro's asking, where can you see the tape recording video? Do you want to? I
will see if I can put it up in my Instagram this week. Okay. I'll put it up.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful image.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. Thank you. Sandro, his name. Obrigada, Sandro.
Yeah.
So this is Abalo.
So Abalo is the word that is the title for the work. I tried to find on Google as you spoke, but I couldn't find an image of Toca-Fitas. So Abalo is the name of this series of videos. Yeah. And then Abalo, mysteriously, you discovered it later in the process, right?
That the letters ended up looking like notes. It was a lucky
coincidence,
yeah. It was
but
really
I love when you describe that the music sheets are all around your house, again, because of this music and art marriage that happens.
But the music sheets are all mine, okay?
Oh, they don't belong to Cassim?
No.
Amazing. But this idea that for you, the music sheets can be like the empty page, right?
Yeah,
like
for sure, yeah.
It's almost as if your silence had music already, right? Like because there's a book I love on Francis Bacon, and Deleuze is describing the process of starting with an empty, like white canvas, and he said there's no such a thing as a white canvas, because there's all the things that are there in the room, in your mind, and I love that idea that for you, it's like the empty page comes already suggesting music, right?
Yeah, that is really nice, Gisela. Thank you.
No, but it's true. It's like such a beautiful dance, and it's almost as if they couldn't exist in your mind independently from the other. Who's the art behind you? Can you show it? It's your own, right?
Yeah.
Talk about this series, because we haven't yet. We have
these are frotage. I would put record
more. We couldn't really see. Show it again. Sorry. I don't want to destroy your
no
tripod. I'm feeling very dizzy.
Sorry. Here, can you see it?
So it's the same thing you do with a coin when you're a kid, right?
Yeah, or leaves. The frotage, you know, that project that we do in all art schools, art and class in school, where you just explore leaves, and then I did it with several different LPs.
And then was it part of the exhibition Aquele Disco?
There was a book. I made a series of books that would open up and have
yes, and then just to give you
and more challenging days. I feel that I think we adapt, and if we keep it's very difficult, but it's also a few things that I'm really finding important. And
Paulo
I don't know why I was researching censorship songs that were censored, but there were some songs that the vinyl had come out already, but because of the dictatorship, they would censor the song by scratching the song out of the
record, the album,
the record. So that's the relation. I started scratching over.
And it's so interesting. Carola has a question. I don't know if it's Carola Bosch or Carola Bosch, but she has a question for you. If you think something creative will come out of the quarantine. And I was also thinking, just a parenthesis, but we didn't talk a lot about memory. And I think that that is a big part of your work when you're dealing with records. And in a weird sense, it's a little bit like a perfume or a scent, right? It brings you right back to your ex-boyfriend. Sorry, Cassim, not Chiara's ex-boyfriend, but like every other girl. But you know what I mean? Like, songs are so associated.
Yeah, they're so associated. Yeah, it's like, I agree. It's like smell. There's some songs that just pull you and take you to another time and space.
But when you're like erasing the music and taking out, of course, now you're mentioning dictatorship, with brings it to such a different level. But when on a more intimate level, when you think of an album or even the cover of an album, like I was telling you, like if I look at Rita Lee or you know, Rolling Stones, it's to me the image of my childhood. It's...
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And we still got that phase where our parents had, right, and we had some. I don't know if you did, but yeah, we had a few albums. Menudo.
For sure, I had Menudo. Even Sítio do Pica-Pau Amarelo, like some
that's good.
And Michael Jackson. I mean, now it's a whole new topic. But so, do you want to answer Carola?
I think so. Look, in reality, creatively, it's been playing with my son. He's 4, so there's a lot of time, and so I've been using a lot of my creativity for that. And I do find spaces that I can be with myself and work. And I've been doing, I think, usually my process of work is I go to a drawing book or you know, a smaller space before I expand into a bigger art piece or something. So I've been doing some watercolors.
Do you have one to show us?
Sure, these are pebbles. I mean,
which brings us back to the water, from Abalo, from Rio, from water. Oh, this is so...
I'm still working on it. And it's just, you know, it's sort of a way to also, it's a process to empty the mind and to try and silence a little bit of... And also there's, I think the important is not, I can't have huge expectations of creating, because in my situation, having a small kid, and Cassim, luckily, is still working, which is really, really good. So, you know, there's a lot of time that I have to be just Cosmo and I.
It's very much survival mode. I hear you.
Yeah, survival mode. And I think also just not trying to answer humongous questions, because we don't have answers right now. So
right. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Te der tempinho de falar da ideia de trás do papel estampado, papel pautado.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell. So this series that she's talking about was right after I came back from an exhibition in Japan. And Japan had a very, very strong impact on me because of their relationship with nature and how they are, or how they treat nature, and their gardens and
is that the work she's talking about? No, I just Googled the name.
No, it's not that. That's a really no, it's called koto. Koto. I have it. And koto is also, it's a musical, a Japanese instrument, a harp, really beautiful, very beautiful instrument. And there I found, I saw those beautiful papers made out of organic, of rice and other organic materials, with all this, the way they translated nature into patterns. And so I brought lots of them back, and I made music sheets that were big, as big as those paper, and I made cutouts, and so there's the music sheet in front showing the paint the paper and the back, so there's overlay of the music with nature. You could.
I mean, Japan. When I grow up, I want to be Japan.
Yeah,
it's like they are like so.
No, Japan is, yeah. I mean, it's a different.
It just feels like the civilization is ahead. Like they are the closest to some sort of civilized world we will get. I tried to find the image as I was listening to you, but I didn't want to be too distracted.
Okay, I'm gonna try and find it here, but my internet is not good.
But I have to say that the three things you research and love and bring in such a beautiful way to us lucky viewers is what has been saving me during the quarantine, which is music, nature, and art.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Very thankful for your work, for your time, and
thank you so much.
I will. Do you want to say anything else that I didn't ask?
No. Well, how are you doing? I didn't ask you.
I'm doing fine-ish. I mean, again, you know, we can't complain. We have roots, we have food, we have a family. And I have the weird feeling today. I had a socially distant date with a friend. We were both wearing masks and we were very far from each other. It was kind of like bittersweet. But I told her that I thought in the future, like 10 years from now, we will miss the quarantine. I mean, of course, not talking about the doctors and people who lost dear ones. I'm talking more about that having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with your family and you know, being stuck with your books and maybe having to, you know, maybe we wouldn't be having this live conversation connecting Rio and New York if it wasn't for the quarantine. So in a weird way, and I know this may come across very wrong and that's not what I mean, but I think we will miss this time 10 years from now, you know, when
this part of the this relationship, not the
very intimate.
I understand what you mean, for sure. I found a picture here of clothes.
Show it. And thanks to everyone who's watching. I know this is a very crazy thing.
So much.
You're looking at your phone and we're all connected. There's, you know, almost 20 people here. Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah.
It almost feels like kinetic art, like kinetic.
It does, yeah, for sure.
Amazing. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much.
Your patience in doing it twice.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite.
Well, Fernanda Higgins, you rock. Thanks for being there.
Thanks you. Thanks, James, Lu,
Claudia, everybody. And so we'll see if Chiara posts her tape falling.
Yes.
We will Google Cassim on Spotify to listen to some good music. And I will save this live for 24 hours. And hopefully put it on YouTube, Carol Queiroz. Woo! Love you all. Thanks so much, Chiara.
Tchau. Thank you so much.
Manda beijinho no Cosmo.
Deixa comigo. Tchau.